Good afternoon. Welcome. My name's Darren. I'm here with my esteemed colleague Ritika, sat down at the front, who'll be joining me in a moment. And let me start with a question. Why are we all here this afternoon on the shift after having a nice lunch? We're here, hopefully, to learn and understand more about Data4Good. Everyone here with that purpose in mind? Let me see a show of hands. Super. Fantastic. But before I do that, I just want to set some context to talk about some of the challenges that we see as data. Now, there's a phrase out there that was created by a guy called Clive Humby in 2006. And actually, he was one of the former architects of the Tesco Club Card. So created a fairly good loyalty program, one of the most successful ones out there, I would consider. And he coined the phrase that data is the new oil. What did he actually mean by that? Well, if we look at society sort of 20, 30 years ago, the monopolies of that time was the oil companies, right? The oil companies really were who everyone looked towards to actually see who was growing fast and what they were doing in industry and how they were changing things in the world. Those were the monopolies of old. But today, the modern monopolies, well, it's really changed. It's changed substantially. The modern monopolies of today are the organizations that are out there that have a massive portfolio of things around data. Hence, data is the new oil. But let's reflect on that a moment. Data isn't necessarily the new oil if it just stays in its raw form. In fact, oil is toxic, right? Quite dangerous as a raw substance. So what do we do in order to make oil something useful? We transform it, we refine it, and we have to do the same with data. In order to make data meaningful to all of us, we need to transform it into information, which is what you just saw happen in that beautiful transformation that was done by someone in our team, and I'd like to thank them because I looked at the animation and it was horrific. So many steps. And the point about this is that once you've got that information, you can then create insights into that information, which affects what you do around your business or opportunity as to why you're interested in data and process. And there's no doubt that organizations that actually have command of the data at that level are going to be the organizations that, as we look at the future, they are going to be the ones that actually define it. Now, to get there, there's kind of three pillars you need to build this sort of data house on from a foundation point of view. The first one is you need to build it on a pillar where you can connect everything together. Because without being able to connect all the types of data, structured, unstructured, disparate ERP systems, IoT sensors, you name it, right? All sorts of different types of data in all sorts of different types of formats, right from Microsoft Access, Excel, through to Oracle, Teradata, Hadoop, you name it. At this level, you've got to be able to connect everything up. The second thing you need to do is as you start to connect it up, you need to unify the platform. In unifying the platform, what you start to do is you allow people to gain access to a single version of the truth of data, a single customer view, a customer journey. You start to build this together. So you want to be able to unify all of those disparate data sources, whether they're structured, unstructured, IoT, or whatever. It's irrelevant. You want to bring that world together and you want to unify it. And you want to, very importantly, govern it. Because if you govern it, you've got control. Then you can secure it, you can access it, and you can start to scale it out. And people then start to trust the data. How many times have you been in your business where you ask for a report on something and you challenge the data because you don't necessarily believe it's the truth? So you want to have lineage in data. You want to be able to point back to it and trust it. It's very, very important. And you'll see where we're going with this because this is important around Data4Good. And the last piece is, once you've done those first two sort of pillars, The cornerstone of everything that you do is you then start to augment the data. You augment the data with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and capabilities as such to really give you automated processes, a more dynamic business model, and take you into the future of where you want to be. Now, each one of those pillars reflects on a common theme of technologies that are used to do this, to achieve it. The first is cloud. Everything has to be cloud native and cloud-based at the data level. Why? Because it provides access. Look at all of you as users right now. I'm sure every single person here, let me see a show of hands actually. How many have got a mobile phone? Right, that's what I expected. Okay, statistic for you. There are more people that have mobile phones in the world than toothbrushes. Not a great stat, but it's the truth. Now, if we look at that, right, and we look at the fact that we've got access to the cloud, we have an abundance of storage, that means we can get access to our data, right? No, not necessarily. We need to have a platform that is open. Open in every sense of the word. It cannot lock our data in. The data needs to be freed. We need access to it at many different levels. We need APIs into it to build up the API economy, build out new ecosystems like what you see on the Apple App Store and things like that, build innovative applications that build on top of platforms. So we need an open platform. And we also need everything to be built with the DNA of artificial intelligence, because that will automate a lot of capabilities for us. It will help us improve what we're doing in terms of insights. And it will allow people within the business to stop focusing on the sort of low-level tasks and move to much more human-oriented, high-end tasks, which is where we really need to apply people. Doing this results in the transformation of organizations. The transformation is rapid, and this is how they start to move more and more towards a digital philosophy in those organizations. And it's kind of built around three areas, as we see. One is around customer intimacy. Customer intimacy has changed, right? If we look at, again, 20 years ago, and you applied for a bank loan, you would go into the bank, you would see them, and you would fill in lots of forms. It would take loads of days to do it, and that would be that, right? And you get accepted or declined or whatever. Today, most people don't visit the bank. Most people just go directly online and actually fill in their data. And in fact, in most cases, your data is already there, right? Because the model of you, the digital twin, is typically already out there. Because you filled your data in LinkedIn, or you've got it in Twitter, or you've got it in Facebook, you've got it in Google, whatever, right? You've got it in a multitude of platforms. We've already got your address details. You've probably got your Apple Pay details in there. You've got lots of information already about you as an individual. So the emphasis there is that model of them having to define the model as a business and then associate you to it has changed. Actually, all of us as consumers, we are driving this change. And now businesses have to understand how to connect to us and how to interact. And we drive that experience. And we have an expectation of that experience in the way that they engage with us. The second one is operational excellence. Organizations have to internalize data as being a fundamental part of their DNA. Why? Because when you do, you have insights into your business that, for example, if you're having a tough quarter from a sales point of view, you can make effective changes in that cycle where you are in at the moment to actually change the business to perform differently. And it may be that you need to increase your margin or you need to operate differently, but you can do that. This is how successful businesses today start to operate. And then the third one is you want to be able to grasp opportunity in front of you. You really need to reimagine your business model. Who would have thought that we have a retailer, Amazon, which I heard this morning on the BBC News, now officially is the largest retailer in the world, bigger than Walmart, and owns over 50% of the global retail market. Globally, 50%. Huge, right? That's substantial. Who would have thought that same company is a cloud provider that businesses are now betting their business on? The most successful, according to most analysts, right, at the moment. Who would have also thought that an organization out there that decided to create a taxi company without having a lot of assets and capital to make that happen, just providing a service, making people buck via an application, has now become the most significant partner of the major fast food chain in the world, right? Meaning Uber moving to Uber Eats, providing Uber as a delivery for McDonald's, which is available. If anyone saw our dismal rugby game in the final, what you would have seen on that day as well is that McDonald's was offering everyone breakfast in the morning delivered via Uber Eats, yeah, as a kickoff to that launch in the UK. So a significant partnership, but a change in business models, right? So traditional companies are finding it very hard to compete with this. So reimagining business models is what it's all about, but you don't do that by just thinking about process. You do it by looking at your data and the fundamentals of data and how it gets you there. But not everything is about business and business benefits. Sometimes we have to take a step back, we have to reflect on things, and we have to think about purpose. We don't just do things for monetary gain all the time. A lot of times we do things because we believe in things and we believe that is the way it should happen. And this is where we're engaged quite heavily in Data4Good, and hopefully you will be as well. So Data4Good is an initiative where we take a step back, we look at purpose, we look at how can we use data for the better of society, for upliftment, for bringing communities together, for doing good, rather than just thinking about natural business-orientated things that we would think about. So with that said, let me take you through a couple of examples of where this has kind of happened historically from a UK point of view, so we all get behind this. First one is, what you see there is a Stephenson's rocket, right? Now, that wasn't the first locomotive. It was developed in 1829. It wasn't the first locomotive, steam locomotive on the market, but it was the most innovative. Why? Because it combined many different things, including the rotary model that James Watt designed, yeah? So this was significant. Why? Because it was used for initial speed trials, and then it became the de facto way of how they designed locomotives in terms of steam. And this became the mechanism in which we could go up and down the country and commute, and we could start delivering goods, build up industry, build up agriculture, etc., etc. So this uplifted the UK as a society. The second one is, anyone guess this? The World Wide Web. So Tim Berners-Lee. This is significant because I'm sure all of you here today have been on the web and done something, right? The internet is absolutely pervasive. It's totally ubiquitous. And originally, when Tim designed it, he designed it as a platform for being able to share research information. That is how it was actually brought about. But today, it's used for far more than that. And it has totally uplifted society, communities across the world, and really engaged everyone for a lot of good. Now, as we look forward, who knows where we're going to go? We're already starting to look at data and no longer need supercomputers to decode genomes. We can use commoditized technology and hardware to do it. We're now starting to predict things that are really critical to us in human life, like cardiovascular attacks. Yes, we have customers where we're doing this today. We're predicting a 20% likelihood of that happening. Why is that important? Well, one, no one wants to have that happen to them. And two, very, very importantly as well, the whole process of doing patient care afterwards, when that event happens, that you have a heart attack, it is expensive. So if we look at it from the cost of a organization like we have in the UK, like the NHS, it is a significant amount of money to be able to facilitate people going through that process of recovery when they have a heart attack. So the future, in terms of using data, how that's facilitated, connecting IoT sensors, bringing historical information at the patient bed together, and then using predictive analytics to work this out and calculate the risk, and then monitor it with streaming data constantly. This is how we do it. We're in production doing this today. So that is a really great use case, but who knows where we're going to go in the future? We have cars being designed today to be able to drive themselves, creating in excess of a gig of data every second as they go along. It's certainly, from our point of view, it means there's going to be more and more demand for data, more and more demand for cloud storage, and many other things that come together. Now, when we start to look at a purpose-driven initiative, there are really three common characteristics that get applied to this. The first one is it is sustainable in nature. And I don't necessarily mean sustainable in terms of like CO2 emissions and things like that. I mean sustainable as well in terms of longevity, of something that hits the mark and stays out there for a long time to do good, right? To affect change. The second one is we see a lot of things that are people-centric. So bringing communities together, uplifting societies, enabling people to have a better life. This is what the good part is about. And the third one is typically what we see in all of these case studies is that they're very, very innovative. Innovative in both the way that data is used, but also innovative in the way that it starts to bring people together and uplift the society and how it's brought together as a sustainable goal. So with that, what we want to do is talk to you about three specific use cases that we have that hit these characteristics. So, on the first one, we're focusing on the environment and on an organisation called the Scottish Environment Protection Agency. Ritika, what was the challenge statement at SEPA and what did we do to help them?
Sure, Darren. So SEPA had three roles to play. First, to ensure that they are protecting environment and human health. Secondly, to ensure that Scotland's natural resources and services are utilized sustainably. And third, to contribute to economic growth, sustainable economic growth. And in order to do so, in order to protect this vast array of assets, they had to collect information, data from disparate sources. So imagine data being collected on chemicals and ecology dating back to 1960s, or data on air, weather, landfills, etc. And they were topping it up with data being collected on business initiatives, so project information, compliance, facts, budgets. The struggle that SEPA had after having all this data was to make sense of that data, to organize and analyze this data in order to make evidence-based decisions on environment and business. And that's when they turned to TIBCO. And we met our esteemed colleague, Colin, who was that time the principal data scientist for SEPA. And they started working with TIBCO. What did TIBCO enable them to do? TIBCO as a technology helped them bring all these data sources together in order to realize the full potential value of that data. They were able to bring in different communities together, like Scottish industries, charities, general public, in order to ensure that they are making data-driven decisions. They were able to utilize the power of visualization, predictive analytics, and web-based analytics in order to do so. There were three major outcomes that happened over this period for Data4Good. First was visitors coming to Scotland could actually get accurate and real-time access to the water data quality across the 23 sites in Scotland. Second, they were able to extend these insights to the residents of Scotland, where people could determine if their land is available for grant to green purpose. So if you are if you have land and you want to have greener area, you can actually apply for a grant, and that can be quickly seen through a website, through a portal. This was specifically used by charities a lot. This became a very, very popular project where charities started using it to actually see where is their next development project. Third is they wanted to help external agencies understand the flood risks. So they took data on historical floods and they actually connected that data to the impact that flood could do on cultural heritage, on economic activities, on human health and environment in order to create strategies or in order to help them make flood-prone or flood mitigation decisions. Yeah.
Cool. So that's an example of the environment and looking at Data4Good. The next one we'd like to talk to you about is nature. So Ritika, what are we doing around rhino poaching?
Yes, this is a very, very massive problem globally. So rhino poaching has actually reached a crisis point, and number of rhinos are declining significantly across the globe. In recent years, the rhino horns, they have become a very, very esteemed entity, and because of that, rhinos are being poached, which is a very sad state. And they are also facing threats on habitat loss and political conflict. The problem is specifically with South Africa here, where rhinos numbers are they are the largest population of rhinos in there, and that's why the conservation of rhinos is so important in that area. But most of the poaching activities are also happening in South Africa, specifically in Kruger National Park, where poachers are actually killing these rhinos, and they have actually killed more than 7,000 South African rhinos over the past decade, and 600 itself in the last year. So you can imagine how big the problem is. Now, one of our partners, Data Shack in South Africa, actually started working with South African National Park Board in order to help with these poaching issues. They took a very interesting idea around what they were doing for consumer research in order to identify and shut down the network that connected guns, poachers, and horn buyers. So TIBCO helped them actually track people and guns, and they were able to take those insights by understanding where the guns are coming from, what are the serial numbers of those guns, how are they being transported here, and they connected it to people movement data, intelligence reports, and social media in order to surface all that information to help with the preservation of rhinos. And again, if you see the outcomes here, they were pretty interesting. Within first 6 months of implementation of this project, there were arrests that were made. The supply chain of this entire industry got disrupted. Team found out that there's a very specific supplier in Europe who is actually transporting or who is actually importing these guns, but when these guns come to South Africa, they were not being declared. And they are then sold in black market, and poachers got access to these guns. So the government actually took steps to tighten the import regulations, and this disrupted the entire supply chain. And that's where, Darren, your point comes in, where we say data is a new oil, but we really need to take insights from that data in order to stop the events, further consequences to happen. And you can see some of the numbers here. We could get 33% decline in poaching numbers. Rooting out syndicates, 2 of them have already been completely eliminated, and we got steady population growth.
Super. So we've spoken about the environment, we've spoken about nature. Now let's talk about something a little bit closer to home, which is, from a community point of view, us as humans and landmines.
Yes. So Geneva International Center for Humanitarian Demining is an international organization which is fighting against anti-personnel mines, cluster munitions, and remnants of war. So more than 80 countries, people have been killed, maimed. They don't have access to transport, water, or agricultural land just because there are mines in those areas. And there are still 110 mines that are under the ground and have not been detected. So Geneva International Center is actually aiming to help these countries and programs to understand where the mines are and then clear these mines areas and return them back for social and economic growth. With TIBCO, they were able to do this very flexible and at a scalable level. TIBCO helped provide these programs and countries very quality level data where they could actually make decisions around where to start the project on mining, demining the area, whether to stop a project, because these are very expensive projects, and to able to track the project over the entire life cycle. So you need to see how these projects are going on, because you need to ensure that your resources are efficiently utilized. And Geneva International, by its own efforts, have actually saved 31 countries. They have made them mine-free. 52 million mines have been actually destroyed, and they are providing safe, efficient, and effective way to help with these demining activities.
Cool. Super. Thanks, Ritika. So those were 3 great case studies, right? But now we want to really take it one step forward, really involving all of you. So a couple of minutes on this. What is One Step Forward? One Step Forward is an initiative by us, by like-minded people as yourselves, where one day, I've never really commuted into London. I've worked for many different software companies. I started at TIBCO, moved into commuting to London, and one of the things that struck me was on the walk from Marylebone to Baker Street, how many people were sleeping from a homeless point of view. And it was just, I was amazed, right? And I came back to the office and I spoke to other people that were experiencing this on other routes, and we were just, wow, this is a really sad situation. So, what do we all think about it? We should try and do something about it, right? And everyone violently agreed that we should do something. So we got some like-minded people together who were really focused on this and willing to put time and effort into it, and we kicked off a project where we started to do some due diligence. We've worked with several charities. We have some of them in the room today. Rob's here from Hope, which is fantastic. And in working with these organizations, we started to learn a lot about what homelessness actually is. And in saying that, I want to give you some stats. Just to put it into perspective, so in London, there are 9,000 people homeless, affected by homelessness. Out of that, there are 3,000 that are sleeping rough on the streets in London every night. 3,000 people. Do you want to hear the really scary statistic? 50% year-on-year growth this year to last year. Now that is a sort of trajectory that none of us want, right? That is bad. We don't want to see more and more people ending up on the street, so we need to do something about it. The second one here is 25,000. I wanted to take a look at this and say, let's take a different lens. I actually believe this is probably a global problem, which starts to make it move from a problem to more of an epidemic, to be quite honest. 25,000 is San Francisco. San Francisco is a city, right? Several times larger than London. And then take another step back. Let's analyze a bigger country. North America, 550,000. These are some scary stats. You start to look at the demographics of China and Africa and other places in Europe, and we have a big problem out there, a really, really big problem. So what are we doing? We are aiming to facilitate a way that we can, firstly, in the due diligence that we've done, we believe that people need to be brought together. Communities need to be uplifted and they need to be networked. Not just communities, but the charities need to get connected. Corporations need to get connected. But it's important that they get connected through a trusted platform. This can't be led by a vendor like TIBCO, because in doing so, what that does is it breaks that trust that the charities have already worked very hard on actually enforcing and putting in place to be able to help these organizations come together and these individuals. So one thing that we're doing is we're creating a platform using the TIBCO platform to be able to facilitate all the charities, all the organizations, all the individuals coming together. And it's a trusted platform and a secure platform. With that, we move to the human connection. The human connection is, in order to gain that trust, we need to create an experience that is unique for every individual of a person who is affected by homelessness. Unique in such a way that we don't want to really be able to provide them money because we don't know how that money would be spent. What we do want to provide them is a digital wallet where people can donate towards. You can track it then using blockchain, essentially, and QR codes. And you can see who have you contributed towards in terms of donation, and you can track it and see what effect you've had. That would be a better way for all of us as consumers to be able to trust things, right? And from that point of view, turn it face around and work with the people that are homeless, affected by homelessness. They want to be able to transact in a way that they could find a shelter for the night, or they could get some food. Or let's take it one step further. Actually, the real problem in the analysis that we've done already is not necessarily getting a shelter for the night. That could be facilitated, right? The real challenge is in getting people onto the right journey of having a job, having the right skills to get to a job, and then staying, in my third point on here, staying long term in that job, right? Being able to help them move along that process and be able to monitor that, track that, make that happen, and support them in the way that that needs to happen. So that's the third focus of the approach from our team. Now, we've created a 5-point plan. We don't have time to go through all of this, but you can kind of see the things that we're talking about here, and you're going to get the recording from the TV, and you're also going to be able to see the slides. So you can read through this at your own content. But what is really important, what we want to say to all of you, is this is an initiative that's not about TIBCO. TIBCO is part of this. But this is about everyone in this room. And it's about your friends, your family, people you know in corporates. It's about the entire network of the UK. And what we want to ask you is all of you to join us. join us as part of this, as individuals, as people in this room that may well be at competitors out there in the stands. Let's forget all of that. Let's be part of a society together where we have a positive purpose and we affect change in a way that has never been done in the UK. I can tell you we've already spoken to the government, and the government would really like to get behind us on this. So we're having many great conversations at many different levels. So what I'd like to ask you all to do right now, if you want to be part of this, grab your phone, point it at the screen. It will recognize the QR code, and it will take you to a quick way that you can register your interest in being part of this project. And that's it. From us, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for your time. If you want to know more about it, please join us outside at our stand. Thank you very much.